Hi everyone, welcome to Samarth Academy and our video series Explain and Simple. So, this is a video series where we try and break down topics for you and declutter them. So, let's get started. Today, we are going to discuss about power distribution companies or the DISCOMs and their various aspects. So let me just lay out what we are going to discuss over the course of this video. Firstly, I'll introduce you to the power discoms, their present status as of today, and we'll try and understand the various challenges faced by the distribution companies, and then we'll break down various reforms that have been undertaken in the past 25 years. Okay, and after all that, we'll despite these reforms, what are the additional steps that need to be taken to reform this sector? Okay, so let's get started with the introduction. So power distribution sector is a very critical sector in the whole electricity ecosystem or the power ecosystem, and distribution is actually the weakest link in the supply chain of the power sector. Okay, it is the weakest chain because the discoms themselves are financially strained, and they are prone to disruption and private competition, right? So currently, if you look at the distribution utilities, most of them are loss making, and in fact the entire losses of the public discoms for the year FY21 was in the range of 90,000 crore rupees, which is huge. Okay, and besides these losses that they are accumulating, they are also there is a large or a very high amount of outstanding dues which these companies are yet to pay to the generators. Okay, so generators can be public utilities again, or they can be private sector players as well, like Adani or Tata Power or things like that. So even in this regard to the generators, they are there is outstanding payments to the tune of around 68,000 crore rupees, which is overdue, and this is as of March 2021. So the financial uh, financial status of these discoms is in a mess. Okay, and this further aggravates the problem in the sense that because of the poor balance sheet, they are not able to make the investments that are required to modernize the infrastructure, and so that there can be wider penetration of renewable energy and consumers can have better options and more more latency and more uptime, right? So power cuts are rampant across India because the infrastructure and the grid is still uh, is more like a legacy infrastructure. It has not been modernized. So power sector globally, as well as in India, is undergoing a sea change. Now this is the change which this sector is being disrupted. Renewable energy needs to be adopted in a big way, and in fact, our the entire species existential existence depends upon this adoption, right? So this is another challenge that this sector as a whole is facing: how to adopt renewable energy. In India, this transition is even more challenging because of the poor operational and financial condition of the distribution sector. So this distribution sector itself, because it is strained, there are issues with respect to adoption of clean energy. Okay, now let's move on and try and understand some of these challenges. So what I've done here is I've tried to break down these challenges that are faced by the distribution companies into various subheads, which will make it easier for you guys to understand these challenges and to structure the thought, right? So firstly, we'll talk about financial challenges. Financial challenges primarily have to do with the financial health of the discoms. So as we have already seen, discoms already have very high levels of accumulated losses and outstanding dues. We've already seen the losses were to the tune of 90,000 crores, and the dues are to the tune of around 68,000 crores. Then there is very high cost to income ratios, largely due to legacy long term PPAs or power purchase agreements. So 80%, almost 80% of the total cost of their or the expenses for these distribution companies is comes from the power purchase that they do. Okay, so purchasing power is the major cost component, and this is where these companies have gotten into long term power purchase agreements, which are very static and not dynamic at all. Despite there being a power market, the power market is not utilized for short term buying and selling of power. Rather, long term agreements are there uh, where the terms are actually skewed in the favor of the generators and not the distributors. So this is the most important reason of accumulated high accumulated losses and heavy losses of the discoms. Okay, then as we have already seen, there is underinvestment in infrastructure modernization, and this actually leads to poor grid quality and under realization of revenue. So it is a vicious cycle. You have a poor grid, you cannot invest in infrastructure, the grid remains poor, and which will lead to power cuts, and the kind of revenue that actually should have been realized is not realized, and that leads to further more losses, right? Then let's look at some of the operational challenges. So operational challenges would refer to the kind of challenges that these distribution companies face with respect to the operation, that is the distribution of power, right? So biggest challenge is that there are very high levels of losses, in the sense that AT&C losses, aggregate technical and commercial losses. So these basically AT&C losses essentially are associated with basically poor billing, collection, very low levels of collection. Okay, collection efficiency is poor. Then there is amount of then there are unavoidable losses or I square R losses when they are distributing, and theft and robbery is also rampant in India, despite there being laws outlawing or prohibiting these things. These activities are still rampant. Okay, and another important reason why these discoms are unable to get out of this vicious cycle is that there is politicization of the entire power commodity, and because of which there is lack of periodic tariff rationalization. In fact, in many states, tariff rationalization has not happened since 2 decades, and this is because the state governments perceive power as a commodity which needs to be given out to people at a very minimum price, or not at a market price. Rather, it needs to be given out at a very cheap price, and this is actually seen as a populist measure as well. So this actually leads to may in fact lead to poor poor financial health and under realization of revenues, and obviously more accumulated losses for the power distribution companies. So then let's talk about some of the structural challenges. Structural challenges, we'll again talk about some of the governance related issues, and some structural issues with respect to your electricity commissions, both at state and central level. So firstly, there is politicization of power and government interference with respect to various bodies. So there is lack of autonomy, and there is also lack of transparency with respect to working of these entities, and that hampers development of quality and market linked behavior of these entities, and leading to your poor financial health eventually, right? Then there is monopoly of public discoms in T&D segments, that we have already seen that the whole distribution segment, the public discoms have around 90% of the consumers are dependent upon public discoms. So this monopolization and leads to lack of opportunity for the consumers, and lack of choice for the consumers, and also leads to poor quality being aggravated over a period of time, right? So privatization would be helpful in bringing competition in this sector. That is one thing, and there are different models, franchisee model or a licensee model, different kind of models that that have been undertaken in various parts of India in different states, which can work on case to case basis, right, with respect to privatization. Then another challenge that this sector faces is cross subsidization and free electricity. That again exacerbates the whole financial problem for these entities. Then there is last subheading is the challenge that is faced due to disruption. And as we have already noted, as we have already seen, that the sector is on the cusp of disruption, and there needs to be widespread adoption of renewable energy. And how to do this poses its own challenges to the sector, right? Then, for example, one of the challenges is how to incorporate uh, a shift from consumers to prosumers. Prosumers means, for example, consider a household that has a solar rooftop installation. So they become both the producer as well as consumer of electricity. So how to do this, how to set up smart meters, and how to set up and how to give them grid connectivity, so that they can act as both a producer and a consumer. This poses a challenge to the discoms, and it also would lead to some kind of erosion of their revenue base, right? So these were the major challenges that were faced, that are being faced by the distribution companies. Now let's look at various reforms that have been undertaken in this sector in the past 20-25 years. So this slide is primarily giving us a view of all the reforms that have happened, but we'll focus on some of the more important ones, or the ones which acted as milestones for this whole sector. So we'll start with the Electricity Act 2003. So this was a milestone judgment, milestone legislation, in the sense that it led to a lot of delicensing, and it led to vertical unbundling in the power sector. So when we talk about vertical unbundling, it means that this whole power sector comprises of three segments, that is a generation, uh, transmission, and distribution, right? So when we talk about these three segments, initially there used to be just one entity, one utility that used to provide all the three functions. But this act itself provided for unbundling, in the sense that you will have different entities, so that more value can be unlocked in the sector. So this is very important. Then it provided also for open access to and power trading, which is essential. But even at this point of time, the power that is being traded is minimal, and essentially most of the power being purchased by the discoms is being done through long-term power purchase agreements. There have been very few states which have uh, now actually undertaken or passed legislations to ban any further thermal PPAs, long-term PPAs and thermal PPAs, so as to actually both embrace renewable energy, and also to get out of the hold of the generation companies in a long term this thing, and to embrace dynamic pricing, right? This is the need of the hour as well. And also it introduced multi-year tariff structures, right? So then after that, let's move on to the other set of reforms. After that, the important one was uh, the RARDP 2008, and this was primarily aimed at reducing AT&C losses. In India, currently, if we look at AT&C losses, are among the highest in the world. Our average is around 24%, whereas the global average AT&C losses is only 8%. And in mature economies like Japan and US, these range from 4 to 5%. So there is a huge gap that needs to be drilled down upon, right? So this RARDP primarily aimed at reducing the AT&C losses, and actually we have reduced this number. Uh, and in fact, in many states where there is private participation, for example, in Delhi, Tata Power has brought this AT&C losses down from around 55% in 2002 to only around it's around 8 or 9% currently, right? So this can be brought down. but it needs a certain amount of investment in the infrastructure, modernization of the grids, and obviously strong governance mechanisms, right? So now let's move on to 2015. Two important reforms were brought about for this whole power sector in the year 2015. One was the claim for state specific power development plans, where some decentralization was given to the states to develop their power plans, and Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, which provided for improving rural access to electricity and called for feeder separation, whether it is commercial or it is household, and also feeder separation with respect to agriculture and non-agricultural use, right? And introduced and enhanced the scope of metering in rural areas, so that there can be greater billing efficiency, right? And the second important legislation was Uday, which is Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. And Uday का primary purpose था कि जो भी डेट है और जो लॉसेस है डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कंपनीज की, उनको उनको ऑब्जॉर्ब किया जाए और उनको स्टेट बियर करे, ताकि ये एक फ्रेश स्टार्ट कर सकें, right? So despite Uday doing well for the first few years, the Discoms losses have again mounted and are a problem statement currently, as we have already seen. Then important legislation that came into an important reform that came in 2018 was the Kusum scheme, which is a scheme that pertains to solar pumps. Ideally, the idea is that most of the free electricity is being given to the agricultural for agricultural use. So if that agricultural use can be decoupled from the grid, and or in fact can become self-sufficient by the use of solar energy, then the discoms, a lot of their revenue outgo would be or their balance sheet can be improved because of this, right? So this was the whole thought process behind Kusum. And then some of the recent reforms, isme the most important reform is service regulation. So $3 trillion reform based result linked revamped distribution sector scheme. It's also known as RRDSS scheme. This again is kind of a uh, financial infusion. So 3 trillion rupees infusion into the power sector, so that this can be made sustainable and viable, right? So these are the reforms. We'll not get into the depth of each of these. I just wanted to give you a picture or a color of what has been done in the past. And now let's look at what needs to be done going forward, so that if this sector has to be if this sector needs to become viable and self-sustainable, right? So let's go on. So firstly, let's talk about state-owned utilities. For them to succeed, there needs to be greater devolution of power. There needs to be a clear separation between the utility and the state or the government, right? So that they can have autonomy and transparency. Again, good corporate practices where independent directors and all can help in bringing about this separation. Then higher private participation in distribution holds possibility of greater efficiency, and this has been seen in the areas where Tata Power, Adani, Torrent Power, they have been working across different models. There have been improvements in AT&C losses, and there has been better availability as compared to their public sector peers, right? For consumers that receive subsidized electricity, so if you are providing subsidized electricity, the best model is DBT or direct benefit transfers. This could be in form of cash, largely have to be in form of cash subsidies, so that this will actually lead to prevention of theft, right? And there can be greater efficiency. This is again something that has been seen from various pilot studies that have been done across India. Then delicensing distribution will help introduce competition and enable retail choice for customers. From a consumer side, it is good, and also the required infrastructure has to be built. You need newer players entering the system. Then the state government should also promote autonomy, competency, transparency of the State Electricity Regulatory Commission. currently they have been flawed because of populism and state interference. Then tariffs should be regularly revised. Periodical revision of tariffs is essential. If not quarterly, at least yearly, the tariffs should be revised so that the market rate that these utilities get at the end of the day has to be at par with the prevailing rate in the market, right? And prepaid metering can help reduce theft and increase collection. This has been seen in the case of a successful case study from Manipur. Then investment in distribution infrastructure is a major component, and your revamped central government reform schemes, state discoms should aggressively use this so that they can drastically reduce their technical losses going forward. So this is for the investment. Whether it, if not, the private sector, the public sector needs to get that impetus to do this. Then large agricultural consumer bases like Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh have reduced leakages by separating feeders for agricultural use from non-agricultural use. So feeder separation is important. This was part of uh, the Uday scheme as well, right? Then Discom should be fairly compensated for additional expenses that they may incur to integrate rooftop solar power generation. So to handle the disruption challenge, and then there should be easy accessibility and a better ease of convenience for the consumers as well, so that they can they can have a better customer experience. Discoms can significantly decrease their power procurement cost by encouraging use of solar pumps for agriculture, so their costs will come down. And as long as markets continue to provide low cost power, Discom should not sign new expensive long term thermal PPAs. Many states have already done that. And you should have an exit clause to your advantage. State needs to, or the public utilities need to be very careful while signing these PPAs. In fact, at all costs, or for all practical reasons, they should go for short-term PPAs and not long-term PPAs. And discoms need to develop better renewable energy forecasting capabilities so that they can deal with the load factor and things like that. And also, there is a need to augment training and capacity building in the sector so that we can have the best manpower to deliver the best results going forward in the future. So this is it from my side with respect to the distributions, the discoms. I hope this session has been useful. Uh, Please, if you found the session useful, please like, share, and subscribe the channel Samarth Academy, so that we'll keep sharing and creating more such knowledgeable content for you. Thank you. Have a nice day.